Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webcast, Security Management 2.0, Time to Replace Your SIEM, sponsored by NitroSecurity, now part of McAfee. I'm Greg Masters, Managing Editor of SC Magazine, and presenting today is Mel Shakir, Product Manager at McAfee and the former CTO at NitroSecurity, and Adrian Lane, an Analyst and CTO at SecuroSys. Mel has more than 15 years of experience in software development and management, information security, and database technologies. Now at McAfee, he is responsible for the company's overall technology vision, including next-generation application and database security management solutions. Adrian is a security strategist who brings more than 22 years of industry experience to the SecuroSys team. He specializes in database and data security as well as software development. Enterprises are faced with daunting challenges in gathering, analyzing, and presenting information from a variety of security devices. SIEM tools are more and more becoming the answer for a number of organizations needing to monitor and assist in managing user and service privileges, system configuration changes, as well as providing log auditing and incident response, all to give a credible picture of the enterprise at any moment. Mel and Adrian will be surveying the SIEM evolution to assist you with pragmatic steps you can take to replace and upgrade your security management platform. There will be a Q&A session following the presentations, so we encourage you to ask any questions via the interface. And let's turn it over to Adrian.
Thank you, Greg. Hi, I'm Adrian Lane, and this is Security Management 2.0, SIEM Replacement Analysis. And what we're going to cover today, really, we're going to be talking a lot about the value of SIEM, but also, how these platforms have evolved and how the customer requirements have evolved as well in parallel. And we want to really go through the process of evaluating the platforms, evaluating the requirements, and come to a decision of whether or not your incumbent is the right solution or not, and if it's not the right solution, how to move forward. We're going to go through a selection and negotiation progress and talk about some of the migration issues, and then we're going to, after Mel's presentation, we'll open it up for some Q&A. But before I continue, I'm going to give a little standard objectivity disclaimer. I greatly appreciate the sponsorship of today's webcast from NitroSecurity, part of the McAfee family, but I need to make it clear that all of the content that you're going to see today from my slide deck is developed independently by the SecuroSys research team. It follows our totally transparent research process, which you can read about on the SecuroSys website. But in essence, it means that every opinion that we have is broadcast through the blogs, and everybody has a chance to comment, vendors, end users, customers alike. So without further ado, let's move on. So why now? Why are we talking about this now? Really, what we have been beset by at our research firm is a constant stream of unhappy customers. We have talked to a different Fortune 500 company every week for the last 2 years about the difficulty they have in managing their SIEM solution, just simply inability to scale across all of the devices and applications that they want to collect events for, missing compliance reports, the growing need for application layer awareness and real-time response, and the continuing problem of some vendors who've either cashed out or have not kept pace. And let's be frank, not every vendor has kept pace, and the features that and the bells and whistles that they add into their product, not necessarily all that helpful to most of the customers. Really what we're talking about today is a lot of the platform evolution in terms of architecture. That's really where we're seeing most of the changes to be able to address the core customer problems and deliver the core value of the SIEM platform. And so, what is it that we are seeing? We are seeing innovation in SIEM. The basic architectural and deployment models are changing. These are much more scalable, whether star or mesh or even some of these hybrid architectures that we're seeing that allow you to not only distribute processing and do a divide and conquer across your entire organization, but also starts pushing some of the policy awareness, policy enforcement, and processing of the incoming events out to the nodes. So it is a complete holistic type of architecture. We're also seeing additional more efficient storage, being able to categorize incidents and not necessarily move every single piece of data from the nodes up to the central server. And once again, we're seeing endpoint analysis and enforcement, actually enforcing the policies at the nodes to be able to help with some of the security and compliance challenges. This is really helpful when we can change the architecture to be able to push and communicate policies out to the individual nodes, or at least the node understands it's only going to be collecting logs and can be tuned efficiently for that job. So another big area that we're seeing is the usability enhancements. And a lot of the structural changes are what actually allows for the usability and performance enhancements, meaning event and log enrichment. So I'm pulling data not only from all the devices I want, but devices or applications of a different variety, and filling in the gaps in some of the events, or not just correlation, but really the enrichment of a particular event by pulling maybe LDAP information about a user and combining that with the rest of the event trail. And this is key because it makes a lot of the reports less onerous to build and to generate. It provides much easier forensic analysis, that if you do have to do the deep dive, if there is something unusual going on, that really helps. The reporting, once again, most SIEM tools are going to have centralized reporting. The quality of those reports, the quality of the data included, and actually scrubbing those reports of some unnecessary data is very important. Use of visualization technology. Now, I know that most of the vendors out there are going to claim that they've got a visualization dashboard. Not all dashboards are created equal. The real architectural value we're talking about here is not just a web console and some duct tape. And that's not what we're doing here. We're really centrally administered and centrally managed. It's not just bound together by a dashboard. This is really critical to be able to scale and to be able to cooperatively allow log management, log collection features work within a SIEM environment. Another area of advancement that we've been seeing is the analysis piece. We've authored some research in the past about monitoring up the stack. This encapsulates a lot of what we're talking about. A lot of the vendors are going to advertise deep packet inspection. And it's really become kind of a marketing throwaway term because everybody, quote unquote, has it. And so you can read the headers on a packet, or you can, reassemble in a session. That's really not what we're talking about here. Everybody's going to have deep packet inspection, but deep packet inspection does not give you a business process analysis. That's really done at the app layer. It has nothing to do with packet level inspection. Being able to link in with tools like file activity monitoring, database activity using monitoring, and even some of the general configuration analysis tools gives us a much better awareness of the information that's out there and some sort of contextual analysis as well. We're able to actually tell if it's a business process that is being interrupted, and if so, how it might be compromised from an attacker. And finally, content analysis. We're seeing some DLP-light type of features, not full-fledged DLP for comprehensive content analysis, but the basics. Some regular expression checks is a lot of what we see, but it really does allow you to assemble packets and actually get into the content that's actually in there. And I think this is what some of the vendors mean by deep packet inspection, but they don't actually have it. So really, this is more than meets the eye. And why I keep harping on the architectural changes is that a lot of the vendors have continued to upgrade their feature set and have marketed it aggressively, but those are the kinds of bells and whistles that don't necessarily help the customer. LDAP integration, the malware detection, that's great, but those things are kind of more bells and whistles. The architectural changes, the single centralized policy management, the ability to distribute policy seamlessly throughout the organization, to not worry about how different nodes are set up, that they'll automatically get taken care of. That's the type of architectural changes that are seriously disrupting the market today. And I think that's been reflected in some of the acquisitions that we've seen. We really want to make the analysis, usability, and integration as seamless as possible. And I believe that these architectural changes have done just that, because the SIEM platforms that were designed and deployed 5, 6, 7 years ago just simply have not been able to keep pace without a major overhaul. To be able to integrate with some of these types of new features and be able to take that content and make sense of it. On the other side of the equation, we've been seeing evolving requirements from customers. And this has really been kind of an interesting point because in some cases, they're legitimately evolving requirements. There are things that you did not anticipate before. There are types of malware or devices that you simply did not know you were going to have to deal with. In other cases, it's just simply you bought the wrong product. It could have been that it was misrepresented to you. In other cases, the evolving requirements have left your product along the side of the road. And so this is really part of the exercise we want to go through when evaluating whether you have the right SIEM solution or not, and put aside your biases and take a critical look at what you need to get done. My business partner Mike calls this the blank slate approach, where you're really trying to remove some of the emotion from this, because you might be an IT administrator that came in and there was a crappy product in place already that you now have to deal with, or you may be the guy who's emotionally invested because you chose the product and through no fault of your own, the scope has simply changed. So this is the time where you want to take a critical look at your requirements and say, what is it that I really need? When it comes to scalability, where do I need to be today, and where do I think I need to go in the next couple of years? Where do I need to put my time and resources? How do I want to create efficiency in an ideal world? And really, when it comes down to it, how do I cut costs? How do I save money? And have enough time to walk the dog at the end of the day as opposed to sitting here and managing the SIEM all night. You don't necessarily want to take just those things that are pissing you off with your current product that tends to skew the result, but you really want to take a very critical look on what your current product does well, what it does poorly, what's missing, and what your evolving requirements are. And you want to fully document all of these because these become critical to your success in actually identifying whether your current SIEM solution is either satisfactory or not. And if you are going to move to a different platform, this is the entire set of requirements list that you're going to need to do the product evaluation. So platform evaluation. And I recommend this process even if you're not going to be replacing your SIEM. It's good to know what's available in the marketplace. It's good to see what some of the platform trends are. But if you are worried about your current product, this is critical. So checking your ego at the door. Once you've got your list of core requirements and you're happy with them, you're going to gather the stakeholders and find out what the other parts of the organization really need. There are a lot of different sections of IT that use SIEM, IT compliance, IT operations, security, you name it. And so this really needs to be a selection process that involves the entire team. You want to make sure that you stress where those requirements, the core requirements, and be able to prioritize those based upon some sort of criticality. And, you know, every organization can have their different sort of way that they're going to measure that. Also, you want to take a good look at the current performance, identify the weaknesses or omissions of the current product. So once you have the basic requirements in place, go ahead and start looking for different products and different vendors. Create an RFI if you need to. And in terms of questions you might want to ask, types of, you know, come up with your own set of questions. We really recommend that you don't just simply pull something off the internet, that you actually build an RFI that links directly to your set of specific requirements. Don't get too creative, because I know a lot of vendors will actually ask everything under the sun, thinking that they're going to weed out some of the vendors through that process. It rarely helps. You're going to get a lot of lying on those forms anyway. So the goal here is to, once you understand what doesn't work, to be able to figure out where you need to fill the gaps, create the set of specifications that you're going to be delivering to the different vendors and chart it out. So one of the aspects that we have been seeing also, as I mentioned before, is the change in the deployment models. We have noticed that the flat architectures and the hierarchical architectures work for some organizations still, but a lot of the larger organizations, this model has simply not been working particularly well. From an IT ops perspective, you will always be allowed to, have different ways you want to scale your organization. But if you have a single hierarchical model with different regional installations, it's somewhat difficult to manage those without an infrastructure that's going to support it. Some of the mentioned previously, ring and mesh architectures are two of the ones that we're seeing that are helping vendors scale. Should be obvious at this point that scalability, data management, easier collection of information, and easier automation are the aspects that I'm really hammering on here, because this is the core developments that we've been seeing with the change in the vendors. These are the areas that you should be looking. If they have some of the more advanced models, if they can deploy across a distributed organization, if they can tune at the node level from a central location, we feel that you're going to see a lot better performance and a lot better ease of management. So let's take a look at the vendor evaluation side of it. Once again, now that you're familiar with some of your core requirements. Probably a little slide deck problem here, so give me one sec. Familiarize yourself with the vendors. I've already mentioned create the RFI and RFP, and create a short list for evaluation based upon the feedback you get back. If you've constructed the questions properly, the type of architecture and the type of solution that a vendor is providing you should be evident. So understand beforehand what type of architectures are out there. Construct your RFI, or I'm sorry, requests for information or requests for procedure comments in such a way that you'll actually gain some meaningful information. Generic off-the-shelf RFIs and RFPs don't tend to do that. Review the answers and create your short list for evaluation. You're not going to have the time or the resources to evaluate a lot of vendors. You're probably going to be limited to 2, maybe 3 in some rare cases. And so once again, based upon your core requirements, make sure you have weighted out those requirements of what's critical, what's good to have, and what's purely nice to have. Select the vendors and start driving the POC. Define some real tests. This is one of those areas that a lot of vendors don't particularly like us all that much. We tend to provide questions and testing procedures that do actually stress the vendors out. Most vendors are going to come in, they're going to have a set of scripts, they're going to have a set of sample data, and they're going to have a set of test results. And they're going to run them in front of you, and they're going to demonstrate every feature you've asked for. Those aren't real tests. This POC is yours, not the vendors. You need to make sure that you have gotten real tests that are actually going to demonstrate the product functionality that you need. So we encourage you to come up with some sample test data, basically define the test and try it out. We also recommend that you simulate an attack. Set up a red team, either do a live replay attack, see if the product will actually detect it. If not, why? And if so, what did it find? And is the forensic information actually viable? This is a really handy way of going about this, and it takes more time. It takes more effort on your part to actually exercise the tool. But in the long run, you're actually going to shake out all of the things the product does well or does not do well or is missing in features and functionality. And that's really important. Remember, you're the buyer. You don't want to have this POC scripted from the vendor standpoint. You want all the works. So once you've gone through this process a couple of times, you should be pretty clear on what the vendors are offering. And you should also have a pretty clear picture in relation to your incumbent vendor, what's going to work best for you. So now it's really kind of decision time. And you really need to go back and take a look at the original goals. How much of this effort was because you're pissed off? Be honest with yourself, because now this is the point where you're going to make your decision and you're going to present this to your executive team and find out if there's really budget, find out if your expectations are realistic, and actually try to sell your decision and your analysis to the rest of the staff. And if you have biases and if you have based this upon unrealistic expectations or unrealistic requirements, that's really going to stick out like a sore thumb when you do this presentation. So document everything. Create supporting documentation about how the POC went, about the requirements. Get buy-in from your stakeholders. You really need to have a clear intent and objectivity when you deliver this presentation and actually go to get budget. For most of you in IT operations or IT security that are going to be driving this process, you've got additional questions that are going to be asked for you that you might not have thought of. Are you going to be using your own staff? Is it going to be in-house or outsourced? Can you train and maintain this project? Is there really budget to do any of that? What is the realistic timeline to implementing and delivering this product? And that's really quite important, because you might be upsetting the operations team for over a year to get a new product rolled out. This is not trivial stuff. People spend millions and millions of dollars on some of the large-scale SIEM implementations that we talk to customers about, and they're heavily invested. And so small things tend to ripple through the entire organization. So make sure the requirements are documented, the incumbent evaluation and the challenger assessments are fully documented, cost estimates, migration planning, and your formal recommendation. So where does that leave us? Negotiations. This is kind of where it gets fun. So let's tell the incumbent they lost even if they didn't. Why not shake the tree? If you've been going through this process, your vendor probably knows that you're unhappy. So tell them they lost, and it's not necessarily ethical, but it is negotiation 101. They already know that you've got an unhappy customer, and they're likely going to make some amends. It will change their product roadmap. It will help get you better pricing and possibly some other features, or maybe even licensure that will help you scale or address the problems that you've got today. So regardless of what the outcome was, you want to start that process on the side and see what the vendor's reaction is. If you can get additional modules, if you can get additional services, scale up at reduced cost, by all means. There's a lot of pricing pressure that can be put on both the incumbent, or if you actually have decided to go with one of the challengers. Timing is important. And I'm probably preaching to the choir here, because most of you know that end of quarter pricing tends to be better. If this is a large replacement, there's a lot of money that's going to be on the table for both parties. This is a fairly critical point. And also remember that you're also going to be dealing with internal politics during this time frame. You might be dealing with the boss's boss. So that might be the person who last approved the previous SIEM or log management purchase. So internal friction is something you need to be braced for during this entire negotiation effort and replacement effort. Migration. So you've decided to change, and if you've done everything right, if you've got your requirements in order, this is still going to take lots of work to plan, to prepare, and to orchestrate. Migration plan, rollout strategy, we generally recommend that you focus on incremental success. That's what we like to call quick wins. Basically find those small areas where you can implement and get either core feature requirements up and running quickly, or deficiencies that you've always had up and running. Most likely during the migration plan, you are not going to be gutting the existing product and going immediately to the new product. They're going to run in parallel for some time, so you're going to need to plan for that. Plan for who's going to be trained on the new system and what order of events you're going to be rolling out new features and functionality. And so once again, if you can put the new system in place and have incremental success that will resonate and inspire the entire team and really help your position for this change, because it can go badly very quickly. So do your homework, do your prep, define the timeline, and really figure out what's going to be most beneficial to your organization for the implementation and migration plan. So kind of in summary, I mean, this is really, we're really trying to not only stress that there are changes in the market that have fundamentally altered the landscape and been disruptive in SIEM. We know this. We've been talking to probably 100 SIEM customers over the course of the last 24 months. The effectiveness of their strategies have really come down to their ability to understand their requirements and remove the emotion from the process. Understanding the current deficiencies, clearly having a set of guidelines of where they want to go with the product, and evaluating both the incumbents and the challengers on a level playing field with real tests, with real data, doing the things that you naturally need to do, not only for your compliance reports on a day-to-day basis, but also really digging in the event that there's a breach or some piece of malware that's infested your organization, and finding what forensic information is available, how easy it is to use, how easy it is to drill down and cross-reference information. Once you've made the decision, make sure that you've got everything documented, plan your negotiation strategy and migration strategy thoroughly, and at that point, hopefully your homework's all done and it will work out. Well, that's my slide deck. Once again, it's Security Management 2.0, SIEM Replacement Analysis. I'm Adrian Lane, and next up is Mel.
Thank you, Adrian, and good afternoon to all of you. For those of you who joined late, I am Mel Shakir, the SIEM Product Manager at McAfee, and the former Chief Technology Officer at NitroSecurity. Now, most of you have already heard about us, so I will be very brief in my introduction of NitroSecurity. We are a leading SIEM vendor, and what makes us different is the speed and scale of our solution and integration of key security technologies into one powerful solution we refer to as the content-aware SIEM. We have a pretty significant customer footprint both in commercial and enterprise. And you may already know that NitroSecurity is now part of the McAfee family. Now, those of you who have been following us would know we have gone from being a new entrant in the SIEM space to becoming a leader in the Gartner SIEM quadrant in 4 short years. During this time, we have also got numerous awards from technology evaluators and analysts. Here is a small sampling of the 600 plus customers, which includes everything from Fortune 500 to small and mid-sized enterprises in all key verticals. So one of the key problems today is large volumes of security data, and this is not without reason. Regulations such as PCI call for granular audit trails. Also, in an era of zero-day exploits, malware totaling tens of thousands a day, botnets, advanced persistent threats, client-side attacks, we cannot be selective in the evidence we keep. This means we have to keep a lot more data that adds contextual meaning to the logs, and even content like documents or a history of chat and email sessions that would be key in fact-finding and addressing the security and compliance use cases. An event count of 1,000 events per second is not uncommon for a small or mid-sized company, and this would generate a terabyte of compressed data and several billion records in a single year. And for a large company, they would generate this much volume in a single day. Now, the number one issue Adrian cited today was scalability. Now, it is here where early SIEM vendors have overpromised and underdelivered. Many SIEMs have become an after-the-fact reporting tool because they cannot deal with the fast data collection, analysis, and reporting all at the same time. And the key culprit in the underlying culprit is the underlying platform on which the SIEM application was developed. And why is near real-time key? Well, for faster incident response, of course. Every year, Verizon cites in its data breach report that the evidence of a data breach was there all along, but it was discovered months later. This is because the analysts cannot do their job if the tool takes 30 minutes to answer every what else scenario. In NitroView, data can be collected and analyzed in near real time and compared to weeks and months of historical data with baselines, broad correlation, context, content, so the data is truly actionable for security analysts. So let's take a quick look at the NitroView solution. NitroView is an appliance-based solution. At the top of the stack is the Enterprise Security Manager, which provides all the key SIEM functions such as log aggregation, normalization, correlation, analysis, and reporting. NitroView solution also provides many advanced options, such as an integrated IPS, an advanced correlation engine, and deep packet inspection devices such as application and database monitor to complement the information that may not be in log files. Now, from a high-level deployment perspective, at the top we have again the ESM, and the two primary functions in the ESM. One is the collection of your third-party logs. We also refer to that as a receiver. And the second critical component of that is the Enterprise Log Manager, or what we refer to as the ELM. Now, if you're a small shop, you can have all of this delivered in a single appliance. But if you're a bigger shop, you can choose different deployment options that will allow you to scale from a small to a very large enterprise. You can also add direct attached storage to your SIEM to increase your online reporting capabilities, almost as much as 100 terabytes today, okay? Which would translate into, with a 10:1 aggregation, that would translate close to 1 trillion events that you can have pretty much online. And you can leverage your entire SAN infrastructure to store long-term archives for PCI requirements, like for 7 years or 3 years or whatever it may be. And then these other options, the advanced correlation engine, which provides not only the traditional rule-based correlation, but it also provides something called risk correlation. I'll talk about that in a little more detail later. And it also provides historical correlation, so you can go back and check, against a rule that you may have written now to see if there's any information fitting that profile. And the other two devices, the DBM, the database monitor, and the ADM, the application data monitor. I mentioned earlier, both of them are deep packet inspection devices. These capture information over the network. We also have an integrated IPS solution, which is where our roots began. And that not only serves as IPS, and totally integrated IPS, but it also serves as a remediation device for any log events to trigger, for example, global blacklisting of an IP address when a certain event occurs. It also actually doubles up as a net flow collector, which helps you piece, how a person may have traversed the network. Okay. Now, so far we have not only delivered the fastest and the most scalable SIEM with up to 100 terabytes online storage and approximately 100 billion online records. Again, these are unaggregated, so an aggregation would mean up to 1 trillion records. We also provide high-speed options such as a 2 terabytes of RAM for very fast analytics. But you can pick the deployment architecture that is right for you. Okay. Adrian mentioned that it's the same deployment architecture that may not suit everyone else. So for smaller deployments, for example, you can pick an all-in-one appliance model with virtual VMware appliance options. A hierarchical deployment is most suited for a very large deployment or for enterprises that span many data centers and continents. And you can also add HA and failover options with hot standby and instant failover. So here's a traditional SIEM again, or if you want to call it SIEM 1.0. We know by now that a traditional SIEM aggregates logs from all your sources into a central place in near real time. They parse out nuggets of valuable information from the logs, then normalize and categorize the information into a common taxonomy and apply context and intelligence to make the log data truly actionable. But we took our SIEM to the next level by tapping the network for more information that may not be in logs or is not being logged. For example, a malware-infected host behaves as a web server just for an instant to download new instructions. Do you have a log file for that? No. If it's a zero-day exploit, say it's targeting a PDF document, you may not have a log event which says the user clicked on an infected PDF. Do you log webmail, chat activity, P2P file transfer from your instant message session and from malware? You don't. Does your database log tell you that the results of a database query had 1,000 social security numbers? Well, none of this information is in logs, but you can complement logs with network intelligence. Monitor net flows, content and documents that are being exchanged, look at response of database transactions, monitor instant message conversations and webmail messages. So a content-aware SIEM, what we call our SIEM as, uses techniques like protocol classification, deep packet inspection, application and document discovery, document reconstruction, and even session replay. Now, the other notable thing that we delivered. Now, all SIEMs provide a rule-based correlation engine, and this works well and good when signatures and paths are well known. But this approach does not work for zero-day exploits or advanced threats having unknown attack vectors. Now, to deal with the unknown, we added a unique risk-based engine. It does not require writing rules. Instead, you model your enterprise risk by defining high-level attributes, such as admin users, sensitive applications, which become a correlation instance or a living alert with thresholds. Then the engine continuously scores all the activity matching one or more or a combination of attributes that define your risk. And you can trigger alarms based on those thresholds or deviations from a normal baseline. So the risk score will also decay if the activity ceases, but it leaves a high watermark, so the period of anomaly is highlighted and can be analyzed. Okay. So here's a more specific example on how you can truly model enterprise risk. Let's say you're a healthcare environment or a hospital, okay? And you may have higher risk from celebrity patients and the leakage of their personal information, or from people with stringent illnesses such as HIV, AIDS, or mental illness. Okay? Using the ACE correlation engine, security teams can now be on a higher alert when the risk score rises as a result of activity associated with specific patients or specific illnesses. If your company's governance process tells you that the higher risk comes from employees with poor evaluations or those that just resigned, then you can model exactly those attributes in your SIEM, things that impact the bottom line. Now, here's how the stack gets quite powerful with the integration of NitroView with key McAfee technologies. Okay, McAfee's Global Threat Intelligence Platform, for example, collects intelligence from millions of McAfee sensors and gateways deployed globally with reputation information about bad actors, IP addresses, websites and domains, files, messages associated with botnets, command and control, malware, and spam. This information is critical for you to keep out dangerous traffic from your network. Not only is this information pushed to NitroView as watch lists, but you can do a full historical analysis of bad actors on your networks whose reputation score has been updated by GTI to suspicious or malicious. The next step in our strategy is tight integration of NitroView with McAfee ePolicy Orchestrator platform. This will dramatically reduce the time for remediation. This is achieved by combining threat intelligence from the network with information from the endpoints. For example, McAfee Risk Advisor and EPO provide accurate risk scores of the endpoints and countermeasure options based on asset configuration, application control, file integrity, policy adherence, or violation. Okay. The full and accurate know-how about threats coming from the network, from global feeds, and information from the endpoints is necessary to create actionable security policies and automate countermeasures for remediation of threats. We call this situational aware risk management. Now, last couple of slides, we will talk about use cases. So let's take common use cases and how a content-aware SIEM would help you analyze these threats. So let's take the first one, sensitive documents that leaked from a database. A content-aware SIEM will produce many relevant alarms. It can look in the response of a database transaction and infer how many rows of sensitive records were accessed and trigger an alarm if a threshold is exceeded. It can trigger if sensitive data in an attachment is being sent out to an external address using an alternate email such as webmail. But that's not all. The entire SQL session history, including details from all transactions that did not trigger any alerts, are also captured. The MIME decoded email records, complete with the from and to address, subject, message, and even the attachments are captured. The instant message session data and a transcript of the entire IM conversation dialogue between the parties is also available. A lot of this information have not been in the log files, but the connection is made by a content-aware SIEM between different data streams, logs, and network packets to provide that complete activity trail. Now, here's another a typical use case. An endpoint gets infected because a user inadvertently got fooled into clicking on a malicious document. If the IP file message already had a reputation score because it was seen before, it would probably get blocked by the McAfee's web or mail gateways. Now, if you didn't have one and it did get through, it may get stopped by McAfee's HIPS, the host-based intrusion protection system. If the HIPS agent fails to quarantine the threat, you have a potentially compromised system at your hands. So all the events from GTI, HIPS, are in the SIEM at this point, and by reviewing current and historical data, the SIEM can provide all the information on who the infected target communicated with, in turn potentially infecting them. Your target and the attack surface are quite clear to start the remediation process. So that's all I wanted to talk to you about. Thank you for listening. Let's open it up for questions.
Okay, thank you, Mel and Adrian, for your terrific presentations. I want to remind everybody out there in the audience that you can send questions in via the interface. I'll give the guys a chance to catch their breath, and we'll get some questions in. I've got a few already. Mel, Adrian, you ready to field some questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Here's one came in. I know we need a new SIEM, but how do I convince management to take action?
That usually has to do with the deficiencies of the system. Meaning there are, in most cases when we talk to a company, there are compliance reports that are just simply not getting generated, or they're somewhat ineffectual because they're missing information. That's one obvious way. Another way is that if you can show additional efficiencies that can either cut manpower because these reports are automatically generated, or because you are saving time on policy administration and system administration, that's one way. And this is one of the arguments that goes on with organizations, whether they're going to have an in-house solution or use a managed service provider as well. Really looking at the requirements that you've got, and if they're not being met, what is it costing the organization in terms of manpower to do that manually, or in the cases not having them. So in short.
Okay, thanks, Adrian. Our current SIEM collects data very well, but it takes hours to access and drill down into data or generate reports. Can a new SIEM complement an existing SIEM to address this?
Absolutely. Absolutely, it can. And so one of the things I was trying to stress early in the presentation is that when you go through the process of collection and then aggregation and then correlation and then possibly enrichment, you know, you should be developing information there that has enough, substance that it's going to lead you to a good forensic analysis or provide you the data that you need. If it is dispersed across a number of different systems, that makes it a little more difficult to do. And you know, so the ability to do good forensic analysis across 30 different machines, not so much. If you're not able to really make sense of that information and get at least the core pieces that you need centralized and correlated, and in many cases enriched, it's a very difficult exercise. You're going to have people on site for weeks.
Okay, thanks. Our company has budget for one security project in 2012, and folks are divided between SIEM and DLP. What is your perspective?
Mel, you want to take that one?
Sure. Let me give that a shot. So I think that was a part of the crux of Adrian's talk today. Try to figure out what you need. Your use cases, you build your RFIs around your use cases. But here's something I can tell you, what we are seeing. As far as most customers are concerned, we first see a SIEM deployment and then a DLP or DAM deployment. And in few cases, we see a DLP or DAM deployment first, followed by a SIEM deployment. Now that said, I was talking about the content-aware SIEM today. Now this CA SIEM, which is a NitroSecurity SIEM, actually includes DLP Lite. So if your use cases for DLP were around network monitoring, leakage of documents and things of that nature, then you probably might get your DLP Lite as part of your CA SIEM. Now, a lot of people, when they talk about DLP, they also mean that, hey, it's mostly related to information that's stored in my database. So, well, a CA SIEM, will include a DAM solution, which is integrated in the SIEM product as well. Some people, confuse it for, I have all my data in files, and they're essentially looking for a FIM or a file integrity monitoring solution. Well, you can get a lot of that feature set in a SIEM as well. So it's important to understand and develop your use cases. It's important to know that DLP, has a significant technology at different points in your network. So one is network-based, then there are the host-based agents. So if you're really concerned about protecting from the endpoints, then the host-based agents come into play. Or if you are concerned about things leaving through email and web gateways, it is notable, or you should note that, a lot of the DLP characteristics, especially in the McAfee solutions, the web and email gateways, for example, they already have protection capabilities built into those gateways. Okay. Now, yet another use case. Recently came across a customer who said that he really needed a DLP solution. This is one use case where they may start with DLP first and then SIEM, maybe, right? And their environment, it is a primarily SAP environment, okay? And it's a manufacturing company, and all the manufacturing recipes is what the intellectual property really is, and it all sits inside SAP. In that case, well, they could benefit more by deploying the SAP because that's what they're trying to protect. So, SAP connectors, for example, with DLP to make sure that, there is continuous monitoring of new recipes and new information that's getting created in SAP is available for fingerprinting in the DLP. So all these things that you need to consider. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Mel. How about this one? I assume the ESM, ACE, DBM, ADM, etc. are individual tiers hosted on individual servers. First part of this question, what if one tier malfunctions? And two, how much command line configuration is required with this solution?
Okay, there is no command line configuration at all. Okay, so the only people who would even go to the console, the command line console would probably be the support team. Everything is done pretty much through the single user interface. The administration, the reporting, the notifications, the analysis, there's only one console for managing these appliances. It's the same console. And, depending on your privileges, whether you're an administrator or a user, will allow you to access to certain devices and certain functions. Now, as far as, one malfunctioning versus the other, yes, the ACE, the DBM, the ADM, they are all on different appliances because these are specialized collectors and they have a very specialized functions. So, for example, the DBM sits, very Although the DBM and ADM use deep packet inspection technology, the DBM needs to be very close to the databases, which are usually embedded in your enterprise. And the ADM, a lot of our customers use that for monitoring outbound layer 7 traffic. Who's using IM, who's using FTP, who's using HTTP, and how are they using it? Are they using webmail on it, or are they going to Facebook or Twitter or whatnot, right? Again, monitoring at the layer 7. If any one of the devices fails, it does not affect anything else at all. The way the NitroView solution suite works is that each of these devices essentially are polled, okay, by the ESM. If it goes offline, you'll get a notification in the ESM saying that I haven't seen anything come from this device. You'll see a red flag in your console, and that's how it works.
Okay, thanks, Mel. Here's one for Adrian. In the requirements gathering step, who is the most common forgotten stakeholder? In other words, which stakeholder was most often omitted from the process that should have been included?
Well, we're not always aware of all the internal politics going on with the companies that we speak with. I guess I'd categorize it this way: is that if the company was large enough and they already had a pre-existing SOC, that often in the IT staff who actually had to implement the technology and manage the technology were often left out. Compliance was really the driver. They were the ones with the budget. They were the ones pushing the requirements down. And actually the people who had to implement, manage this and needed to be trained on how to use it were often left out of the discussion. If there was no SOC security, I can't tell you how many, let's say smaller enterprises that have one security guy. And quite literally, they tend to get shuffled on the side because they don't really have a lot of budget. They don't really have a lot of operational authority. And they're the ones who, ironically, are omitted from some of the process.
Okay, very good. Here's another. If DBM and ADM are network collectors, how does encryption play into effectiveness?
Sure. So as far as DBM is concerned, it's fairly straightforward. These are the databases are servers that you own, and if you are encrypting the data, which means you have the certificates, you can share them with DBM, and it will decrypt the network packets on the fly for you. Now, as far as ADM is concerned, you can use any other man-in-the-middle kind of decryption appliance because ADM does require a fully decrypted stream coming to it for analysis.
Okay.
Yeah.
What man-hour requirement does effective SIEM require?
Okay. Maybe I can take that, Adrian.
Yeah, it's all over the map from my perspective.
Okay. So it's a little difficult question, but it depends again, small, large, medium environments. It also depends on how dynamic the environment is, how many stakeholders are in the environment. We have customers across the spectrum, small customers, but they have a bunch of stakeholders and they have requirements. For example, they need their own views, they need their own reports, so it could result in some upfront administration costs. And then we have other larger environments, which, like in a manufacturing, for example, where it's not a very dynamic environment. And the users, the stakeholders, the few stakeholders, probably just a SOC, and things don't change as much. There is not that much administration for those folks. Now, if you're referring to the fact that how much administration or resources does the SIEM itself require, as far as backup or restoring or maintenance of the devices and such, well, the answer to that is it's pretty much negligible, because that is one of the things we try to do: make the product and solution very easy to maintain and manage. Now, there is always some upfront cost in deploying a SIEM, because when you get started with a SIEM, configuring and tuning the SIEM to make sure that your use cases are met and your initial reporting and everything is set up correctly and notifications set up correctly, there is some cost over there. But that time and investment one must absolutely make. I think Adrian pointed that out as well. It's not just about bringing in a SIEM and there's magic just going to happen. A SIEM tries to automate a lot of the functions, but there is still some tuning that is required to make sure that it is addressing your use cases, the reason you bought it.
Okay. How does a SIEM prevent a compromised endpoint if the gateway is a different manufacturer? For example, a Cisco ASA and say NitroView.
Okay. So it won't prevent it in that case, but it gives you the situational awareness. It helps to figure out fast, which device was compromised and who did that compromised device communicate with. Because it's not only taking that device offline, you potentially have other infected devices on your network, right, that you also need to take offline. So this situational awareness is really what the SIEM gives you. Now, of course, if you have the Nitro IPS, then you have a shot at taking some automatic remediation steps. Some of the things I talked about with the EPO integration that you can expect down the line. You can expect that there will be more and more automated remediation. Our objective at the end of the day is to be able to gather all the information from all the devices, whether it's Nitro or McAfee devices or whether it's third party. Of course, the SIEM has to work with third party, but be able to provide the analysis in a way that you can find the culprits quickly, rapidly, and then be able to take the decisions you need for remediation quickly.
Okay. Let's see. Are there SIEMs that can support infrastructure and applications globally, or do we need multiple SIEMs?
The short answer is yes. There are that can share information globally, depends upon how they're set up.
And Mel, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it depends. So let's say you have a website, okay, and that website, you may have the primary data centers and then you may have the backup data centers, but they're all part of one logical unit because they are, for example, a part of your failover solution. You can absolutely have one SIEM monitor that in a way that it looks like and is reported as one unit.
Okay. What is your recommendation to size a SIEM team?
That actually goes back to the previous answer that I provided on the resources, but we have a lot of variation. We have some large customers with a very sizable deployment, and they have a couple, just two, dedicated resources that are responsible for creating policies and pushing them out and rolling out making sure the reports, notifications, all is set up correctly. And then in certain cases, we have a SOC, who's responsible for operating the SIEM, but they're also, there's a lot of users, and their responsibilities sometimes are broken up. So you may find that more than one person is interacting with the SIEM as an administrator, but he or she is, limited to certain kinds of functions based on their realm. For example, firewall admins who are part of the SOC team, or or somebody who's responsible and understands the application and database component of it, like the application subject matter experts or the application security officer who may be part of the same team. But usually, just to administer the SIEM, I have yet to see more than 2-3 people who are dedicated, although there are lots of different users and stakeholders.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. In your experience, do most large organizations manage the SIEM centrally or allow the distributed branches to participate in the administration and configuration to insist on their unique needs and requirements?
From what I've seen is that for very large organizations, they have different stakeholders and different regional offices with different responsibilities. So, a web interface allows that to be easily mitigated so that you still have central administration, but geographically disperse stakeholders within the SIEM system. And in most of the SIEM systems will allow for separation of duties on the user rights management for those who create policies or those who do administration.
Okay, so thank you, Adrian and Mel. With that, we're going to have to wrap it up. I could tell everybody out there that the slides from both presentations are available on the NitroSecurity website under webcast. You just go to nitrosecurity.com/webcast. And also beginning tomorrow, this presentation will be available on demand on the scmagazine.com website. So thanks to Mel and Adrian, and thank you everybody out there for tuning in.